Hello, and welcome to the podcast, Equipped to March, with WVU Chi Alpha. The hope of this podcast is to equip small groups with sound biblical teachings on God and how to walk with Him, and to equip the small group leader with the tools to lead as God has called them. We pray you are equipped and encouraged by this podcast in order that you can march well for our King on the college campus. Now, please welcome our hosts.
All right. Hey, welcome back to our podcast, Equipped to March. We're excited today. We've got a special guest. What's your
Sean.
name?
My name is Sean McEntee.
Well, welcome to the show. We've got the best host, Christopher Mancias.
Yeah.
The truest, the loyalist.
Bring the dab, man.
Mini dab.
Today we're going to be talking about what the gospel is. So we're going to be getting into that. It's going to be fun. So I guess to kick it off, Sean, what is the gospel? What is the good news?
So I think the first time I really understood what it was my friend Eli asked me this question. He said, "Hey, what's the gospel?" And I'm like 18 or 19, and I was like, "Oh, it's that Jesus died for me." And he was like, "Sean, that's terrible news." And I was like, "Oh wait, what?" I was like, "No, I'm Jesus. He rose from the dead for me. That's the good news." And he's like, "Yeah, that's better news." He's like, "But that doesn't explain why. Why did Jesus die, and why did he raise again?" And I didn't have an answer, and I finally was like, "I don't know." And then he was like, all he said was this. He said, "So that we could be friends with God again." And it was so cool, and I remember that, and I wasn't embarrassed. He walked me through understanding it, and then he walked through deeper that we were created to be in a relationship with God.
Yeah.
We screwed up that relationship by sinning, and then couldn't fix it ourselves, and only Jesus could fix that relationship that we screwed up, and that was why he died and why he rose again, so that we could be friends with him again.
That's what's up. Good.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, I remember hearing the same thing from Eli. It's pretty funny when someone jukes you like that. It was like, "Oh yeah, Jesus died." It's like, no, like.
That's so sad.
Yeah.
That's actually awful. Man.
Yeah, I mean that's what I grew up hearing. Was I don't know. I guess I never really thought critically about why Jesus dying was good news. He's the hero of the faith. It's like our hero just died. You know, none of the disciples.
It would be like the credits start after that.
Yeah. All of the disciples when Jesus died originally were like when he died, not knowing that he was going to raise from the dead, were distraught,
Yeah.
And so it's it's not good news. It's rarely good news when someone dies, know. And so that's hearing the same thing was really cool. Just because I had never thought critically about well, why did Jesus have to die?
Yeah.
And so
I think too, for me, it was my experience. I think it's probably the experience of most people. We know what the gospel is about. Jesus died and rose, but I was one of, I think, a good majority of people that didn't know why, right? Why did Jesus need to die? Why did Jesus rise from the dead? Why did God become a man? That was, I just knew God died for me. Cool. But that's that's really not that's not life changing until you understand why. And so what do you guys think is the reason why Jesus had to die for us? Why do you think Jesus, the why of it, not just the what, but the why?
That's a good question. Why does the gospel matter?
Yeah. Why is it even good news?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you talked about bad news. I think that's a great point.
yeah, so here's the bad news, everybody.
Good news first or bad news first?
It's funny because I don't know, if someone announces that them and their wife are pregnant, that's great news. So bad news doesn't have to precede that good news. In order for that to be good news. But for us to be friends with God again, Jesus dying, all of this stuff is really good news. Well, in order for this good news to be so sweet, someone giving their life for mine means that there was bad news before that good news, you know? And so it doesn't make sense to talk about the good news without also talking about the bad news. And the bad news is that every person, apart from like putting their faith in Jesus, is in trouble with an angry God.
Yeah.
And the reason is because what the Bible teaches is that our selfish actions, right, also called sin, against a holy God, they merit eternal punishment, eternal separation from God. And so even all the way back to Genesis, the first book of the Bible, you know, Adam and Eve, when they chose disobediently against God's commands, his desires for their life, they were unable to have relationship with a perfect and holy God, because, you know, it's like and unlike, you know. And so at that point, like, there was like something that needed to be done, and Adam and Eve, nor anyone since then, has been able to save themselves. You know, no one since then has, you know, like been, you know, worthy of eternal punishment and then like became unworthy or undeserving of eternal punishment. And so, you know, there's this, you know, the Bible talks about it. It lays out the story of how man is guilty before a perfect and holy God, and needing of some sort of
like salvation,
like outside
salvation, right? Outside of yourself, something has to happen in order for that relationship with God to be restored again, so we can be friends with God again, and in order for that eternal punishment that we're all deserving of doesn't have to happen. And so in short, sin separates us from relationship with God, and makes us deserving of eternal punishment. And so something needed to be done, and so that's the bad news, and so it makes the good news all the better.
Well, I was thinking about this and just curious what you think, Charles. Like, I think I hear a lot of people say, oh, well, people are mostly good, some people are just bad. Do you think that's true, or do you think it's like people are like in ourselves apart from God? Do you think we're mostly good, or like more bad and more messed up than we think we are?
I mean, it was cool. We were talking to some guys the other day. Jeff and I were talking to them, and we kind of asked a similar question, but like kind of for us, like, what do I believe? Like, is lying that bad? Is you know, I don't know. And so we were saying, like, okay, so like one thing that, you know, we were reading through Matthew 6, and it was talking, maybe 5, and it was talking about you know, if you kill someone, then that's bad. Like, no one's gonna say murder's okay. Oh, well, maybe soldiers, but maybe, I don't know, I feel weird about that, you know. But if you just go up to someone on the street and stab them in the neck a couple times, like, no one's gonna be like chill with that. Most of the time we get in trouble, and so like, we always go to the extreme. And so it's like, oh, I didn't kill someone, or I didn't, you know, I didn't cheat on my wife, or I didn't whatever. And it's like so extreme, or like everyone always brings up Hitler like all the time. Like, it's just so funny. Like, well, at least I'm not Hitler. It's like, yeah, at least you're not. Like, I'm glad.
At the least.
It's like a really low standard. And so, I don't know. I feel like when we talk about, or at least when Jesus talks about it in Matthew, he says, you have heard, one example, you have heard that to commit murder is wrong. But I say, and this is Jesus, I say that even if you hate your brother in your heart, you are just as guilty as if you had committed murder. Several examples. And to me, it kind of just came back to this idea of like your question, are people that bad? Most people are pretty good. It kind of just depends on what you think good is. And what the Bible says is sin equals selfishness every time. And I've been kind of like playing with this idea, that I don't know. It's fun to think about. But like, if I didn't have the Bible, if I didn't have rules or laws like governing my life, like Morgantown Police or whatever, I think that the answer to that question is that man is always selfish. He's always going to look out for his best interest. He's always going to look out for his highest good above yours, or my preference above yours, right? And that has been like messing me up lately, like for real. To think like if I didn't have all these laws or rules or whatever, Bible or whatever, would I still feel right about being selfish? Like in my heart, would I still feel right about being selfish? And I just can't say yes. Like, yeah, murder and lying are different, but they're both selfish.
Yeah.
Every single thing about them is a selfish act. But when on the flip side, to be unselfish is loving. And yeah, you get walked on, you get cheated, you get, all these different things. You don't come out on top. Yeah. But you live an unselfish life, and that is like what we're talking about. Jesus showed us what that looks like. So yeah, I don't think man is as good as people want to say we are. And it's not because of the laws that we break necessarily. It's like the one law, selfish/unselfish, that we choose to break in every decision that we make, in every word that we say. Being unkind, like that's not as bad as shooting someone in the face, but it's pretty bad. Like it really is. Like
you can mess someone's life up, like by saying something unkind. I mean, we've known of people that for 20 years they're still bitter about something that someone said to them. And they're you might have like a grandma, that's still bitter, that doesn't talk to her sister. Mm-hmm. You don't see family members because something unkind was said. And I think it was so cool. I was talking to my friend Justin, and he sent me this video of, like, I guess this farmer had put a flag of one of his political party that he liked, and some people saw it and didn't like it, and they went and burned all of his equipment. Burned his tractors, burned his combine, burned his like everything. And it was so cool. He sent me, he's like, why is there so much hate in the world? Like, why, like, what is this? And I felt like the Lord just responded, like, people are ruled by their passions, and they don't have someone or something bigger than themselves. And they don't believe that there's someone or something bigger than themselves. And that's like on the sin side, but even on the side of like people that, the grandma that's bitter and hurt because someone said something rude, like they're like, I think all humankind realizes, I mean, we all know, like you're saying, we all know that we do stuff wrong. Like that's our conscience speaking to us, saying like, this is wrong. But none of us seem to have an answer in ourselves or in society, or like in most religions, and even like some false Christianity, some wrong ideas of Christianity, where God's not actually able to save you from anything. You know what I mean? Like, I know people that say they're Christians that have been angry and bitter and unforgiving for so long, and they're ugly people, physically ugly, but more so spiritually ugly. And you're like, I don't like that you call yourself a Christian, because you are like you. But it really comes down to like, you don't believe that Jesus can actually save you from this. You don't believe that Jesus can actually save someone else from this. You don't believe that Jesus actually has power, and that there is any good news in your life. Yes. You are set on bad news, and you're set in being stuck on, I just want to be angry, or I wanted this, or the world just sucks and there's no hope. And it's like, and especially if you call yourself a Christian and that's like your outlook, that's sad, and that's not what this says. That's not at all what this says. You know what I mean? That the good news is that in spite of our misery, in spite of the hurt and the pain that people bring to us, or that we bring to ourselves, that there is actually someone who can do something about that can actually change everything, so that you don't have to be bitter, even if that person never says I'm sorry. You don't have this farmer who got all of his stuff destroyed. If he knows Jesus and he knows the good news, then he doesn't have to be like distraught. His life isn't destroyed because someone destroyed his stuff, because there's good news that the God of the universe cares about him and cares about the person who destroyed his stuff, and can bring hope and restoration to that. And I think that's so good. Yeah, that's crazy. Like, and that God became a man because he loves us that much.
Yeah. Wow.
You know,
Yeah.
I think Catherine Booth, one of my favorites, she said this: the doctrine of the New Testament is not God so hates the world that his own son was compelled to die in order to appease God's vengeance. But it's that God so loved the world that he gave his only son to die for us, right? That we could be restored. He doesn't do it out of like, oh, I guess I have to do it because I need to appease my vengeance, but I do it because I love you. And that's just crazy.
That's really good.
I think I've heard that somewhere. Is that in the Bible?
Yeah, I think it is. It's the most quoted verse in all the Bible.
Interesting.
I think it's John 3:16.
Oh, wow.
Is that what it is?
That's crazy.
I know that one.
Yeah.
Most people know
That's
that.
a great verse.
Yeah, I think it's a big deal to like understand like what the gospel is and why it matters. And something I was thinking about was I was thinking like where, you know, in my own heart, like I can kind of see this and we can kind of see this like in your life, and that's powerful. Like our testimony is like very powerful. But we need to know, like, or at least for me, like I need to know that it's not just me. You know, or like not just my friends, like okay. And so it was really cool. I was thinking about this and I was like, man, there's a lot of verses that talk about the gospel and stuff, and those are great, like nothing against them obviously, but I was like, it helps me to see stories like maybe someone's heart or character, and it was really cool. I was thinking about how does the gospel, like you were just saying, like if the gospel affects someone's life, obviously it's not just like, oh, tell someone about it. But I was thinking about Peter, the disciple Peter, and everyone like always trashes on him, and it's like it was funny at first to me, and now I'm like, guys, like Peter's awesome.
Yeah.
He was Jesus's best friend.
Yeah.
He was like always with him, and Jesus was close enough to Peter to kind of call him out about stuff. And so that to me is like a good friendship. Like my good friends are going to be like, Charles, you're being dumb.
Yeah, we see it as like, Peter, you're an idiot.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, like Peter, I love you.
Yeah.
You're being an idiot.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
I don't want you to be.
Yes, exactly. And so I was thinking about Peter's life and how much proximity he had with Jesus, you know, for however long, and then also like intimacy, like he was constantly with him. They basically camped out every night. Like it sounds so fun. Yeah. But then, you know, like right around when Jesus gets arrested, for no reason, and then Peter is with him, but I think it's in Matthew, or maybe Luke, it says that he followed everybody at a distance, and so he's starting to kind of like distance himself from Jesus, his best friend, when he should be like fighting people off, you know, type of thing. And then he denies Jesus 3 times, right? Like Jesus tells him he's going to deny him. And Peter's like, no. Even if everyone else does, I will stand by you. And then like right away he kind of starts to see like, dude, you're the worst friend ever. And so he denies him once, he denies him twice, and he denies him 3 times. And then he looks, and Jesus is just looking at him. Yeah. And like even just thinking about that like freaks me out. Like, dude. And then when Peter like rightfully just starts weeping bitterly, and dude, I'm just like, imagine like even not just Jesus, but like your friend that you trash, and then he's looking at you the whole time, and you're just like, I don't know what I'm doing. But then in John 21, it's really cool. Jesus pulls him aside, and he asks him if he loves him. But he doesn't just ask him one time, he asks him 3 times. Yeah. To kind of make up almost like payback for the 3 times that he said he didn't even know him. And I think about Peter, and then he does, and he's like, Jesus, I love you. Yes, I love you. And he's like frustrated. He's like, yes, I love you. Like, okay, chill, you know? and then Peter ends up being like this amazing man. Well, not ends up, he already is, but like he continues to be this amazing man who is affected and changed because of the gospel. Because of what you said, not just that Jesus died. Yes, miraculous. We couldn't be here without that. Yeah. Not just the resurrection. Yes, miraculous. We couldn't be here without that. But the true good news is that it wasn't, like you said, like just an appeasing debt, but now I want to be friends with you again. And Jesus says it and does it. Yeah. And then Peter goes on to be this, like, he gets like 3,000 people saved in one day. Like literally just insane. Yeah. And what are some things you guys think about, like when you like I don't know, like biblically, the Bible or whatever, like whatever y'all think about that.
I like learned recently, or just it was like pointed out through a sermon I listened to the other day, that like, you know, when Jesus says in the New Testament, Jesus talks about this gospel, but he hadn't given his life yet. He hadn't, you know, died on the cross. He hadn't raised from the dead. You know, that you know, Jesus's like death for like our salvation hadn't been like done yet. So like, you know, what does this gospel mean when Jesus was referring to it? And so so yeah, just looking at the Old Testament, I think like the main thing that makes sense to me is like how the even starting like with Abraham, the entire nation of Israel had this reoccurring understanding, like message from God through prophets and different people who like spoke on behalf of God, that there was going to be a coming king one day that would restore things to the way that God intended them to be. And so a king would bring his kingdom. The king of God's king would bring God's kingdom.
Yes.
And so all throughout the Old Testament, you have this nation who's like looking forward to this coming king who's going to bring his coming kingdom. And so, you know, talking to like listening to what you were saying about like Peter and like him being friends with him, it wasn't just that like, you know, in the context of Jesus giving his life and us being able to be friends with him, it wasn't just that God wanted to, you know, in a moment save us from having to go to hell. You know, it was also God desired that we at that point begin a relationship with him again.
Yes.
Which impacts my life today here.
Yes. Yeah.
It's not just when I die, I'm not going to hell.
Yes. Yeah.
If Jesus, the king, is bringing his kingdom and I'm going to be a part of that kingdom, then that means like anytime when a king comes to rule, there's a new way of life.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
absolutely.
so for me, if I'm going to be in the Lord's kingdom, then that means a new way of life for me.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it's just awesome. Like thinking about like, holy cow, these like people in the Old Testament look forward to not just, my life won't suck anymore, you know, but like there will be a new way of life under the ruling like godly king, which is God himself, you know? Yeah. So that's just been really huge for me the last few days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was reading, while you guys were helping me build my couch last night. It's not like you had an option.
We were compelled.
I was holding the oak and he was kind of freaking out and I was like, I'll like read to him. So I first read him Never Touch a Monster. And then I read him the Jesus Storybook Bible. And bro, this book is so sick. And it was making me think about that. It was the story of David and Saul. And Saul was anointed as the king of Israel. And what it said was God didn't want a king necessarily. Like he didn't start out with a king in his idea, because he didn't think that king would always have his people's best interest in mind. And he didn't. Saul didn't. And then David, some did. But that's what's so cool about Jesus and God the Father, because he always has our best interest in mind every single time. Yeah.
I think like building off both of those, like you were just saying, with like sin and whatnot, or like, you know, it's not just I'm saved from hell, but like sin is the greatest evil, not hell. Hell is only created as a response to sin. Yes. You know what I mean? And so it's like, I think a lot of us like have this idea that, you know, either God is out to get us because we sin. Yeah. It's like, no, he actually has your highest good in mind. But his highest good, kind of even circling back to what you said at the very beginning, like the bad news, like God is a holy God. And he cannot dwell in the same place as sin. He absolutely can't. Heaven is a place completely devoid of sin. Right. And God doesn't just expect that when you go to heaven, like you're going to go to heaven and God's just going to get like a magic eraser, Mr. Clean magic eraser, and like, there goes your sin. It's like, no, awesome. He actually expects, he expects and wants us to live a life free of sin.
Yeah.
You know, and
Yeah, right.
Does that mean, like people say, oh, I'm not perfect? Okay, well, yes, technically, because you have sin. So
Right.
you can't ever say I'm perfectly perfect.
Yes.
Only Jesus. But can you live going forward not sinning? Well, I
Yeah.
think yes, absolutely.
Yes.
Because if the answer is no, then either you don't have free will, you know
Right.
what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Or God's not actually powerful enough to
The
do
gospel
something.
doesn't matter.
Right,
This
Jesus
book
died
is
for
a
nothing.
joke.
Yeah. Yeah, right.
If Jesus can't actually save you from your sin, if you can't actually walk out
Yes.
not sinning from when you give your life to Jesus, then this is a pointless book, and we just need to get rid of it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And
And the
Jesus is a
gospel is
weak God.
fake news.
Yeah, and it's like
Not
fake
good
news.
news.
Yeah, it really and so it's just like, but we have to really believe. And you said this last night. I think it's the heartbeat of the Bible. Is like God is always innocent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And God is not out to punish you. He's not out to
Yes.
ruin your fun. But like sin is it is fun in the moment,
Right.
but it has terrible repercussions.
Right, yeah.
And Jesus cares about your highest good. Where when He says, "Hey, don't sleep around, don't do these
Yeah.
things, don't
Don't
cheat
be
on
selfish.
people, don't be selfish," and you say, "How could you?" It's like, no, He actually cares for your highest good. He actually wants the best for you. He doesn't just want you to be with Him in heaven. Yes, He does.
Yes.
But He wants you to live a life that can bless others, that
Yes,
can
yeah, yeah,
see
yeah,
other
absolutely.
people come to know Him. And that's the transformative power of the gospel.
Yeah.
Is that God really does have your highest good. No one else. I don't even have my own highest good
Right.
half the time, you know, and my wife doesn't, and you guys don't.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's not to say less of you, but I know there's one who
Yeah.
always does.
Right.
And so,
yeah. And I think the cool thing about the gospel is that through Jesus, if we have a right view of the gospel, like we're talking about today, it's not all these other things. It's not a misconception. It is actually like, oh wow. You know, in Philippians chapter 2, verse 8, it says, "And being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself and became obedient to the point of death, even the death on the cross. Therefore, God also has highly exalted him, Jesus, and given Jesus the name which is above every name, that at the name of Jesus every knee should bow, of those in heaven and those on the earth and of those under the earth, and that every tongue should confess that Jesus Christ is Lord, to the glory of God the Father."
Yeah.
That freaks me out. I'm like
Yeah.
freaking out right now. That alone, Jesus choosing to do this for me, it kind of just makes me love him.
Yeah.
Like, how could I not love a guy that would do that for me?
Yeah.
And if I love him, then I'm not worried about a list of rules. If he did all that for me, why would I be selfish if he says not to be? If he says it's, and he doesn't just say, "Hey, don't be selfish." He
Yeah.
says, "Hey, I love you.
Yeah.
For you to be selfish is not smart."
Yeah.
Oh shoot.
Yeah.
Like that just changes the whole framework to say, I'll do this because I want to follow you, or I'll do this because heaven, don't want to go to that nasty hell. You know, no, I want to do this. I want to do this. I don't want to sin. I don't want to be selfish.
Yeah.
Because I love you and you have displayed what we've been talking about,
It's
the
Peter.
gospel. Yeah, exactly.
Like Peter wasn't obligated to go preach those 3,000 people. It was his desire.
Right.
Because
Yeah,
Jesus
yes.
had changed his life,
Yeah.
which is the gospel message.
Yeah.
That the king came with his kingdom to change everything.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's like what we talked about in the first podcast. Like, God has a route on your
Yeah,
life,
boom.
and that's like founded in His value. He's most good. He's most wise. He's most loving. And so, like, looking at the character of God, it makes it, that it makes it easy to follow Him.
Yeah.
If
Mhm.
we're like thinking like, I don't know, like if I don't want to be good or wise or loving, then like, I don't want to follow God.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
you know,
right.
like with
Do your
with-
own thing.
yeah, like we went like elections coming up, and a certain number of people will be very excited
Yeah.
when whoever becomes president,
Right.
and a certain number of people will not be excited,
Right. Yeah.
because in their mind, the person, if they like them, they see that this person is like able to make good decisions
Yes,
that they
yeah.
agree with.
Right. Yeah.
It's only like if you disagree with whoever gets elected that you think that they're unqualified.
Yes. Yeah.
But if you have, the king who is qualified to bring his kingdom, then at that point, when you hear, oh, there is a king coming with his kingdom, then like that's amazing
Yeah.
news.
Yeah, right on.
If you do think like, if you see that like this man, this God is
Yes.
like like perfect, holy,
Right.
God that he is. And so that's like, I don't know, just kind of bringing it back to the, the good news that the king is coming, it makes sense when the king is announced,
Mhm.
that
Yeah.
like, that he is who he says
That's really
he is.
good. Yeah. Right on. Cool. Well, Sean, thanks for being with us today.
Absolutely. It's fun.
Like and subscribe.
Yes.
Check out the document. We're grateful for you guys, and we'll see you again. Later. Bye.
Bye.